All right, so I will paste here, paste, there we go. So I named it get random string max, but let me just remove that. So as you can see, this is an array of all the letters of the alphabet and also the uppercase. Now, when it comes to Linux systems, uppercase letters, it doesn't really matter. I think it's, oh yeah, no, actually, it is case sensitive. So it matters that we have uppercase letters as well. So at the end here, you can add symbols as well if you want, but there are symbols you have to be aware of that you can't add in a file system. So make sure you don't add those. Okay, so you can add things like a hyphen, underscore, and so on. So that will increase the chances that the strings are not repeated. So I can do something like that and put one more like that, hyphen and all that, because I know those are file name safe. Okay, so at this point, once we get our random, let me explain how this works a little bit before we go forward. So what happens is we're going to create a text string. So we set it to an empty string first, and then we get this length that was suggested by the user. So in my case, the suggestion is 50. So we get that 50 and tell it to get a random number from number 4 to 50. Now it's 4 because I don't want a file name that is less than that. So I put 4 there. So it's between 4 and now whatever random number comes out of here is going to be the actual length of our string. That way the length of the strings will be random. And then we loop through that length of time. So if let's say the length is 20, even though we gave it 50, but it suggested 20, this is just telling it that this is the limit as far as it can go. So here now it will loop through that 20 times, and each time it will select a random text, random character from here, from 0 to 61. Now 61 is the maximum here. So now that I've added 1 and 2, I can put 63 here to accommodate those guys as well. So a random number between those, and then each time we get a number, we add it, we concatenate to text. So it starts out as an empty string, but then we get from the array a random location there. We just keep adding to it until we get to the length and then return the text. So that should work. Now, even though we got this error, I'm sure we must have created the folder because, yeah, there we go. So the folder is here, and that's because the code for the folder comes in earlier. So the folder code is here, but we got an error there. So that part is done. So let's see if we can actually upload those files this time around. Let me resend. Since I'm not seeing any errors, I'm assuming that it has worked. So if I open there, I see the files here with random file names, which is awesome. Very, very good. Now, the only issue is we don't know where these files have gone and which files, if I upload again, I'm going to get more files here, but we won't know which files are part of which post. So that now is the job for the database to tell us which files belong to which post. So I'm going to delete these guys here because I don't need them. And let's come back to our code here. And this time we want to save to a database. Now we must create a database before we actually save to it. Okay, so the same way we've created the functions file here, we can create another file here. Let me come back to this. We can create another file called database. So let me go file, new, and let's, actually we don't need all that. Let me just save it here and say database.php. So since this is not object-oriented PHP, we are not going to create a database class. We're just going to say db is equal to Now, before you forget, you have to include this file. So let's go to where we included the other files, which is where I don't remember, and that's probably the index page. So we included functions. So at the very top, or maybe the bottom, I will include database.php, like that. Okay, so to make sure every time it's accessed. So we're going to use PDO. Now the reason we're using PDO is because PDO is multi DB, so you can connect to multiple DBs using this, not at the same time, but you can easily switch to another database with this. So I'll give you an example. So for example, if you're using MySQL for this tutorial, then you're going to do this. You're going to say MySQL : like that, and then, because always in PDO you have to tell it what driver you want to use. So in our case, we want to use the MySQL driver, and then at that point we will say the host. We'll say host is equal to, and then ours is localhost. Okay, semicolon. Now if your localhost has a if you need to specify the port, you can do this, like 3306, because that's the default MySQL port, and it was specified otherwise. So you can do that if you want. You can be very specific, but then you put a semicolon there and you put your database name, DB name. Now if you don't have a DB name, you can leave that out and it will still work. So DB name is equal to, now we don't have a database name yet, but we will create one. So I will say slider_db, that's what we will call it, and we don't need a semicolon there anymore. Now we need to go outside the string and put a comma. Here we'll put the username, which is root, and then comma, we'll put the password, which is an empty password for us. So this is how you connect to MySQL. So let's try this. I will come back here. So I intentionally put functions at the top so that I can use these functions even inside database.php. So for here I will say dd db. Let's see what we get there. If we get a PDO object, then everything went well. So let me try to refresh here and do that. So warning, include database failed to open stream, no file like this was found. Okay, database.php. Okay, so I forgot an A here. Corrected now. Do not save. Let me open it again. There we go. So let's try again. Resend. Okay, so it says could not find driver. So it couldn't find this driver we're talking about. So whenever you see could not find driver, it means MySQL driver does not exist on the system. Now, it's not that it doesn't exist, because let's go to our file system. Now, if you are using this inside the XAMPP and MySQL folder, you're not going to face this problem. So this is only for these that are using this method here. So if we go to our PHP here, we don't have a php.ini file. Now that is what tells PHP how to behave. So if you see here, there's php.ini development and there's one for production. So let's just copy this development version, copy and paste. Now the reason we want a php.ini file is, look at this extension folder here. So not even that, there's wait a minute, there are some files here. Anyway, this is for something else, but let's go in the extension. So if you look here, there's all these libraries here, the DLL, direct link libraries. So things like GD, for example, if we're going to be manipulating images, which we're going to need this library here. Okay, we're going to need also these file info, we're going to need the EXIF, and so on. So there's also MySQL here. So we're going to need PDO SQLite. We're also going to need PDO MySQL, which we're trying to access now, and also just the normal MySQL driver, which is right here. So now the problem here is that our PHP doesn't know where to find these files. That's why it's saying the driver isn't found. So we're going to tell it inside our php.ini file. Now you can always create a new file. Let me actually drag and drop this so you see what's contained inside the php.ini development. So it contains all anything you see with a comma, semicolon at the beginning is commented out. So anything that doesn't have a semicolon is actually being used here, like here, engine on. So this one is working. Now in here there's a part which has the extension. Now you don't need to use this file. You can simply copy the settings that you want into a new file and just make a very portable version. That's going to work still. So let me come back here, and this copy I have made, I want to name it .ini so that it's the one that is used, and then we're going to dive in and change a few things. So let me drag and drop it. So make sure that the extension, so let's find extension ext. So there's many of these, but we are looking for a very specific one. Where is that? Oop, I didn't know there were this many extensions. So there we go. This is important here, the extension directory. It says ext there, so we have to tell it. So on Windows systems you use that, but for everybody else you use this dir. This means the current folder, and then you're going to do that. You're going to say ext like so, current folder ext like that. But for Windows you do this. So for others you release this one. Okay, so once we are done with that, we've told it where to find our extensions, but let's look for the extensions themselves and activate the ones that we want. So there's a very large list of extensions, and there it begins. So all these are extensions here up to there as well. So let's release all the ones that we need. You will most likely need curl, you need file info for certain things, you need the GD library because we're going to be resizing images, and what else? So if the you don't activate the extension here, when you do go to try and run something that requires the extension, it's going to give you an error, and most likely the error will be unknown function, whatever that function is that you are trying to use from the library. So it's just going to say that function is unknown. Then it means you have to come back here and change the settings and then restart your server. So we will need exif because I used that in my image resizing class. And then MySQLi, we will need that. Maybe OpenSSL, PDO MySQL, PDO SQLite. We're not needing this type of database, no. So I think that's pretty good for now. Yeah, I will save that. That's all we need for now. And if I retry now, I shouldn't get that could not find driver anymore. So resend. But I still get it, and that is because my server hasn't restarted. So I have to restart my server for the changes to take effect. So stop your server and then start it again. Now unfortunately we told it to load a new thing every time, so bummer. Okay, so now here we have a different error, and it's saying no connection could be made because the target machine actively refused it. What this means is the PHP couldn't find MySQL at all. So that's because it's not running. So I'm just going to start it here for a second. And you can see the port right there, 3306. So let me try again. Okay, so now that it's telling me unknown database slider DB, it means now we are in business. So all I need to do now is go to, if you are using Apache, switch on Apache and then go to PHP My Admin and create that database there. But since we are not using MySQL, we're going to use a different driver. So I'll close this. We'll use this SQLite instead. So I'll close that. And so the string has to change here. So you're going to see how different the string is. First of all, here we're going to say SQLite. That's a driver. And then we're just going to put our database in here, and we're going to call it slider_db. And that's it. That's how you connect to SQLite. Right. So this one can be commented out for future reference. Okay. Now we have to create this database, otherwise it won't find it. So let me come back here. Slider on the desktop.